Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of What the F series, where F is Embedded Finance. In this series, we discuss new trends and developments with experts from the fintech domain. This series is brought to you by Switch.io, where we help startups and tech businesses integrate financial offerings within their existing platform using our banking and financial APIs. Today we have with us Mudit from SBNRI.com. It is a fintech, or safe to say, a new banking platform for NRIs catering to their banking needs. Earlier, Mudit co-founded Curify, a doctors networking platform which scaled to 5 lakh plus members. He was also one of the honorees on Forbes 30 Under 30 class of 2018. So once again, Mudit, welcome to What the F.
Thank you, Shubham, and thanks for the warm introduction.
So I want to start this conversation with what led you to move from healthcare or health tech to, let's say, a banking venture.
Sure. I think from my perspective, it was not focused on I wanted to do it in banking, but I realized that so I searched on various sectors when I was thinking of starting my next venture. This is back in 2019 I'm talking about. And when I was delving deeper into various sectors, I realized that there is one piece very much broken. Obviously, I mean, other sectors, there are huge problems that could be solved for in India. But specifically in banking, I think the banking infrastructure was opening up back in 2019. And I could see a huge opportunity because of the opening of banking infrastructure in terms of creating financial services for different sectors of TG. And that is why I thought there is something that big that could be built. And second, it was more from my TG perspective also. I mean, a lot of my friends and relatives who are NRIs, they used to share their problems with me related to banking and stuff that they had to do with India. So I think both from a demand perspective and from a supply perspective, as I mentioned, as the infrastructure was going up and the services were becoming more as a financial services from a tech perspective, which could basically further the experience. So I think both these things from demand and supply matched, and I thought this would be the right time to essentially give my next 10 years of life to this at least.
Yeah. Surely, we live in the best times to be part of the fintech ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And my next question to you is a twofold question, and it's around the genesis of your current venture. So you talked about the demand and supply, obviously, but otherwise, what are the challenges that you saw in the banking sector for NRIs? And secondly, what do you intend to do in future with this venture?
Sure. So I think more from an NRI perspective, my overall view on how banking is evolving, and that is why I came to one particular TG that I'm solving for. I think what's going to happen is because the barrier to start financial service would decrease because of all these banking infrastructure opening up. There would be different digital platforms or digital interfaces that would be coming up, catering to various TGs. Because banks have always been built from a horizontal perspective. Basically, they started with retail banking and then evolved into business banking, and then different TGs came into. But they were never built from a perspective of various TGs in terms of, let's say, income growth, in terms of demography, in terms of their specific needs. So let's say if I'm a startup and if I'm a business account, I'm sure that their needs are different. Somebody would want an account opening in a very fast time. Somebody would want it, it's okay for them to wait for a week before they get some account opening and stuff. So what I mean to say is there would be different TGs on which digital interfaces would be built. And that is how I thought of that, okay, there would be around 20, 25, 30 different interfaces based on TG would be coming up in next 15, 20 years in India. And that was also happening across the globe. As you see in UK, US, everywhere, these type of interfaces were coming up, focused on TGs or a specific problem. And that is where and because I had this notion of the problems that are being faced by specifically NRIs, I realized that both with the philosophy or the theory of why a TG driven banking interface would work, and second, the demand that is there, matched. So I thought it's important that this could be solved. There would be other pieces that could be solved by other people in the industry, but I was focused on NRIs. Lots of things are broken. Specifically, if I talk about NRI experience of banking in India, the whole perspective of how to open an account, how to transact money in India, um, along with lots of other things in terms of discovering investment products, discovering insurance products that they would want for their family, is completely broken and nothing is integrated. Everything is in bits and pieces. If you want to do remittance, you do it from some other platform. If you want to open bank account, you deal with some other stakeholder. And think of a situation where their secondary account is this. It's not even their primary account where they have to devote so much time. So I think more from that perspective, their secondary account, minimum time that they want to give. So if I create a better experience, that will basically holistically create them a home banking solution. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Actually, I completely agree with you on this. There are like a lot of companies which are focusing on their own TG. They are not going after masses. They are trying to solve certain broken parts of bits and pieces for the specific TG, and they are going after those. So yeah, it's good to see like a lot of companies aiming to provide a seamless banking experience, and that too at the tap of the phone. So
Sure.
that's good to know. And obviously your platform is targeted towards NRIs. So how large do you feel this target audience is? Can you cater to all set of NRIs, or is there any kind of restriction on it?
Yeah, I can cater to all sorts of NRIs. There are roughly around 30 million NRIs across the globe. Yeah, I think I can cater to all of them. But yes, I will go specifically phase by phase, wherein the high need segment would be targeted first.
Sure. Obviously, a huge Indian diaspora lives abroad, and traditional banks are the only ones catering to their needs right now. In the last few weeks, we have actually seen new banks like Jupiter, Epify launching their products aimed at millennials, Gen Z, and there are several others who are working towards a specific TG. What do you feel will be your key USPs or differentiating factors versus, let's say, any upcoming competition?
Got it. I think, well, I see the important part is distribution in my case specifically. Reason being, whatever digital marketing or distribution or whatever marketing is done towards my TG specifically, it's always done from a physical first approach where they will set up an infrastructure first, get NRIs acquired, or when an NRI comes back, then probably banks, go behind them. So from my perspective, I think my value proposition would definitely be very, very much skewed towards how I distribute my product or a bank's product per se. And second, that would also be the product experience that I create or the interface that I create over. So these are the two major specific value propositions. And as I said, the market is decently huge, so probably 2-3 players must exist. If I have to win over competition, I think the distribution would play a very, very important role.
Certainly, distribution is obviously going to be critical. How do you reach out to this wide set of NRIs staying in different countries? Moving on, open and embedded banking, actually, these two words have become quite the buzzwords these days. How do you see these fit into your scheme of things?
Sure, I think it will essentially help me focus on what I am doing for my TG and get the things. If I have to do something with the bank per se, it might take a 2-year kind of a stuff. So it would lower the back end operation for me from absolutely, from let's say 4 to 5x, which is a huge difference in my operations and my execution of what I'm doing. So I think definitely open and embedded finance and all the API infrastructures that are being built, but just a feedback here, I think what I've understood from all the embedded finance companies that are coming up, probably to open source APIs to probably lots of fintechs that are coming up. I think the important thing is the embedded finance companies should also think it from a TG perspective. Right now, what's happening is, and I understand that is a problem at the back end from a bank's perspective, which is whichever APIs are open, definitely you get that structured and get it into the system. But I think if you also structure it on the basis of TG, or let's say how the banks would evolve, that will help marketing, or that will help distributing it more effectively, specifically to fintech players like us. Right now, the problem that I face essentially is when I interact with them, I have to make them understand that this is specifically for this TG. These kind of regulations would not work. So, you have to get some new APIs in. So I think that would also be valid for a lot of other TG segments as well.
Yeah, that's a great feedback. And also embedded finance players which are cropping up in India, they are also at a very early or nascent stage, to say that. So currently they are tying up with banks to get these things done, and certainly they will also move into certain direction once they roll into a larger ecosystem or company. You actually mentioned about like it takes a lot of time and effort while creating any kind of banking product or platform in collaboration with banks. Recently launched, as I mentioned, Jupiter and Epify, they took good 12 to 18 months just to launch their first product. How are you building your platform, and are you taking APIs from banks and building your services on top of it?
Yeah, I am absolutely doing that. Building the specific services that are catered to my TG on top of integrating with banks. Yes, this is how I'm doing it.
Sure. So I believe your users will be able to save and invest on your platform. And what we have seen, generally almost all the banking product, they revolve around some kind of bank account, whether current or savings or nodal. So what role does a bank account play on your platform?
No, I think it's pretty much valid specifically across TGs, but for my TGs, again, it becomes all the more important because anything that they have to do, essentially, they have to have an Indian account per se. So I think bank account is the core to building everything else around it.
Sure. So also there are like lot of studies and surveys on most trusted brands which appear every year, and more tech companies are actually appearing into these studies and surveys, and these platforms are more likely to become the first choice for users for their banking needs. So what do you feel the tech companies, what challenges these tech companies can solve much better compared to let's say a traditional bank?
Definitely, I mean, so you mean to say the banking tech companies or retail tech companies?
Just the companies which are fintech companies which are solving these issues.
Understood. So I think the most important thing I see here is agility to basically perform. I mean, and I take this parallel always. The parallel essentially is there were tech companies that were built from a legacy perspective, such as Microsoft and the likes of Microsoft. But when it was about social networking, some other company came up, and I think the major reason was agility that they could perform, and they think from a user-first perspective more than from the legacy perspective. Similar things happened. Google launched social network; it was not that famous as Facebook. So what I mean to essentially say is the legacy systems would work and function as they are. There would be a few legacy systems who might build a good interface over, but I think they are not built from a product-first approach from day one. But the fintech companies that are coming up, they are being built from a product-first approach. So any problem that has to be solved is being solved from a product-first or a tech-first approach rather than a human-first approach. So any organization that is being built from a thought where the problem is to be solved from a human-first approach, for them to shift their mindset will take a decade. So I think that is the most important thing: agility and the power to execute via tech.
Yeah, actually, I also feel these 2 points, like user-centric products and features, and obviously the agility. It will help the fintechs to stand out versus a traditional bank. Fair to say, actually, embedded banking could become part of several tech platforms, and a user or customer won't be just buying products or services from these platforms. They will also be availing banking needs from these platforms. So how do you see embedded banking influencing different sectors in India?
Understood. I think every company would become a finance company eventually. It has to, I mean, earlier if I need to buy a car, let's say, or a second-hand car or anything like that, I'm just giving an example of auto sector, for example. If there is a company who is being built on that, then every company which has to grow big is now integrating it with the backend. Essentially, if somebody wants a car, then he has to have a home loan, or sorry, an auto loan, post an auto loan, then probably. So lending is already integrated in most of these companies. Similarly, payment infrastructure has been integrated into the systems everywhere we see, be it a retail sector or be it um, an auto sector for that perspective. Things like innovative products like buy now, pay later, all these things are coming up. So what I mean to say is, you have to understand that TG of that particular tech or retail company that is being into the that is there, and the needs of the users for essentially payment or lending or a bank account per se. These are the three major buckets if I have to categorize banking. So everyone would essentially move into backend. Lending has already been started implementing. Lending implementation already been started in these retail tech companies, and with further interesting, innovative embedded finance products, I completely see a huge disruption of every company becoming a finance company at the end of the day.
Yeah, certainly. There are a lot of tech companies. They already have an existing user or customer base. They're interacting with thousands or lakhs of people on the platform, and they would obviously want to provide an additional offering, and the user would actually have to go out of the platform for their banking needs. So certainly, yeah, embedded banking and finance, they are going to disrupt a lot of sectors, and that's what we hope for as well. Thank you, Mudit, for actually sharing your thoughts with us. And with this, we have come to the last and interesting piece of the segment.
Sure.
For our audience, in 30 seconds, you will have to explain what is embedded finance according to you, and I'll be timing you.
Sure. Yeah, for me, embedded finance is nothing but एक सुपरमार्केट फॉर आप इसको बिग बाजार समझो. पहले आप एक रिटेल पे जाते थे और एक किराना के स्टोर पे जाते थे, आप सुपरमार्केट पे जाते सब कुछ मिलता था. आई थिंक दैट इज व्हाट एम्बेडेड फाइनेंस इज. पहले आप कुछ खरीदते थे तो आपको अपनी फाइनेंस नीड्स पूरी करने के लिए बैंक पे जाना पड़ता था या कहीं और जाना पड़ता था, चाहे वो गाड़ी हो, चाहे वो घर हो आपका. आई थिंक विद टाइम एम्बेडेड फाइनेंस ये सब चीज़ें करने से आपको एक सुपर बाजार, हर कंपनी की सुपर बाजार दिखेगी, एंड बहुत सारी कंपनीज एम्बेडेड फाइनेंस एम्पावर करेंगी इन टेक कंपनीज. So this is what embedded finance is.
Sure, thanks for giving a good analogy for that. Yeah. And if you would like to share some more details about your landing page and social media handles, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you.